I had a light bulb moment recently, and that came from the Wild Geese podcast. To quote, what Anna said was, I think it's incredibly hard to retrain your attention span and focus again when you're not entirely sure the present moment is worth being present for. And damn, queen, buy me dinner before you read me to filth. But also, as soon as I heard that, something clicked into place. There's been a rising overlap in hobby content and screen addiction content, which has triggered a very common reaction in me. Vague discomfort and confusion about exactly where that discomfort is coming from. On one hand, I'm a lifelong hobbyist who feels a lot of fulfillment and inspiration through those hobbies, and sees that as a very effective barrier against the ever-grabbing hands of the neon sirens. On the other, something I couldn't quite put my finger on felt incomplete in the whole, 100 things to do instead of doom scrolling type posts I was seeing. A missing link, maybe. And Anna's point is simple, but it's also profoundly true. While there definitely is a screen addiction element to behaviours like compulsively scrolling on Instagram at dinner with friends, don't do that, there is also an element of ennui that draws people to their phones. The drudgery of a morning commute, the meaninglessness of the job you hate but need to pay your bills and stay alive, the mental exhaustion after a day of that job, and the bleed over meh you might feel from all of that during your free time. I think this is what a lot of content is positioning hobbies as the solution for. And hear me out, I don't disagree. However, while hobbies are a great solution to that endless, gnawing vacuum of boredom inside of you, they require more mental buy-in and investment to achieve that than a do this instead of that video might suggest. So, today I want to give you a starting point. We're going to talk about well-rounded hobbies you could explore to build up different aspects of your life, like intellectual stimulation, creativity, socializing, and being active, in hopes of developing a present worth being present for. Let's go! Before we jump in, let's acknowledge a simple truth. Sometimes, it can be hard to start and continue new things because they just aren't immediately satisfying. Logically, we all know this, but we also know that processed food is bad for us, and I ate a donut while I was writing this script. So, my tip is twofold. 1. Frame hobbies as long-term rewards, not instant gratification that can always directly compete with your phone. Especially at the beginning, that is probably enough. And 2, tie your hobby into a goal, something you can work towards outside of just, I want to have fun. Not because having fun isn't the goal, it is, but because you might need a bit of motivation to get over the hill and find that new hobby fun. We'll touch more on that in the first hobby I mentioned though. With all that being said, let's get into some of the hobbies that I would pick up if I wanted a well-rounded approach to not hating my life. These are, of course, based off my personal hobbies. They are not the quote-unquote best hobbies, not that there is such a thing, but they're hobbies that I think are easy to start, and also, and this is important, that you can develop with. So, as always with my videos, inspiration, not Bible. Hobby 1, for intellectual stimulation, reading. Why it's on this list. Because we've been writing and enjoying stories for at least 4,000 years, you gonna tell me there's not something in that? But also because, in this economy, there is nothing required to start. If you utilize your local library, reading can be completely free. And there's something for everyone. Reading can be fun and silly, or you can use it for more serious pursuits. Hell, do both. Read a fun satirical fantasy during the week, and tackle a classic on the weekend. There's also a lot of progress or growth you can find within reading, in terms of developing new skills or expanding your hobby interests over time. Reading can be a gateway to writing, to analysis, writing reviews, annotation, media journaling. Oh, look at all the subtle plugs I just gracefully slipped right on in there. That is calling to mind a very specific Nicole Raffi thumbnail. You could also tie reading into social gatherings, join a book club, or make a bucket list of the cutest libraries and bookshops in your city to visit. Now, to close off this section, let's loop back to what I was saying about goals. My boyfriend, for example, is a late bloomer when it comes to reading for pleasure. He only started in his mid-20s, largely because he wanted to read the classics. That was his goal. Now, I don't know if you've tried reading a classic recently. A lot of them are, dense. They're wordy. So, he tried one, was like, I don't know if I have the skill level for this right now. And he started with easier books. He learned to enjoy just reading for the joy of a good story without needing a thesaurus in one hand, and has now worked his way up to enjoying classics, incidentally becoming someone who also just likes reading in the process. And again, this tip is transferable. As a prime example of this, one of my big goals is to create my own artwork for the digital resources I share with you all, like templates and digital snail mail, and that's a driver for me picking up certain hobbies, which brings me to one of my favorite ways to learn about a new hobby in depth, today's sponsor, Skillshare. At the moment, I'm trying to learn about printmaking, so I took the class Lino Cut Printmaking for Beginners by Amaya Jade. Highly recommend. This class was really thorough but concise, which is the perfect mix for my learning style. Here are some of the prints I've made, by the way. I think this one is my favorite so far. And Skillshare has tons of creative classes taught by world-class creatives like professional illustrators, renowned graphic designers, and successful entrepreneurs. It is the best place to learn a creative skill or pick up a new hobby. If you're looking to reconnect with your creativity and maybe avoiding brain rot, Skillshare is where humans come to learn from other humans. As a little treat, the first 500 people to use my link in the description or scan the QR code will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Hobbies 2 and 3 for creativity and play, DIYs, or journaling. We all knew these were coming. Let's start with DIYs. DIY, why it's on the list. Easy DIYs and Pinterest crafts are a great way to tap into creative play without necessarily needing any artistic skill. You can start small and beginner friendly, but also with things that genuinely prick your interest. So I'm going to show you what I mean with a few of my easiest craft tutorials that require literally no skill. If you like jewelry, here's a DIY tattooed ring holder using nothing but printable tattoo paper and a drawing mannequin. And you can use Canva to source the designs, so no drawing required. If you like goal setting, here's a DIY vision board. I use a Kmart canvas, a tea towel, and a staple gun. Again, no skill required. And if you like fashion, here's an easy DIY t-shirt using printable iron-on transfer paper. Are we sensing a theme? On the topic of paper, if you're on a budget, paper DIYs are another great option. I made a printable DIY theatre ages ago that is totally free to download on my Substack, and you can print and cut and make it at home. But while these are all super easy, we can see a very natural progression path in here for if you do find yourself loving the imaginative, playful outlet of using your hands. Whether that's a more practical path of mastering something like woodworking and learning to build your own furniture, or realizing, hey, I actually enjoy sketching and doodling and I want to dive into that, learn to paint, make my own illustrations for some of the things I'm making. There are pretty endless options. DIYs can also have a really big social element. I love a handmade gift, and I also enjoy hosting craft nights or going to one-off classes with my friends. My best friend and I have a ring carving and rug making class on our to-do list. So overall, DIYs are a great way to build confidence and try lots of different things while you're searching for what creative practices you actually want to delve into. Or you might find you just like making lots of little things. Now, on to suggestion number 2 in this section, journaling. Why it's on the list. Journaling combines creative play with intellectual stimulation. You can start with something completely artistic, freeform and fun, like junk journaling and collaging, and sprinkle in more written forms of journaling as, when, and if you like. The supplies you need can also completely flex to fit your budget. If you're junk journaling, for example, the idea is to use old trash like receipts and packaging. Or if you do want to explore written journaling, all you need is a journal and pen, and you can go cheap for those. In fact, I would actively encourage you to go cheap, at least until you've developed a habit. Now, I don't want to harp on about it too much because I've put journaling under the creative hobby section of this video, but one of the benefits that I specifically credit to written journaling is mental space. When we're talking about screen time especially, I find a ton of input and stimulation just completely fogs up my brain in a way that often doesn't even become clear to me until I've taken the time to destimulate, slow down, and process my thoughts. I've spoken about this a ton on my channel already, but that mental space for me is what fuels my creativity, but also my focus and just general presence. All of which, by the way, makes me feel less inclined to reach for my phone. Next hobby. Hobby 4 for getting out into the world and being active, hiking. why it's on this list. The world is a beautiful place full of things that your phone does not compare to. Yet, modern life does a fantastic job of keeping us inside, usually isolated, anxious, and tired. I know for me, as a city kid and then a mostly city adult, sometimes the world outside of concrete skyscrapers and sardine-packed streets has felt a bit more like a concept than something that I could step into and access. Hiking is good exercise, which has a ton of benefits, we all know that, but it's also such a great reminder of what lies outside your immediate front door. And if we tie it back to the idea of building a present worth being present for, well, using your weekends to escape into nature and see awesome stuff like penguins and a beach full of black swans, those feel like things worth being present for.
What happens when you let your boyfriend pick the day? Welcome to day 2 of 30 days of hobbies. Today we're on a mission to explore a Tolkien-esque landscape. That's a quote from my boyfriend's hiking book. This is his adventure. This mystical place is in Cape Woolamai, so we had an hour-and-a-half drive ahead of us, plus a race to beat the rain. There are multiple trails you can do. We headed to the Woodland Trail, which was stunning, but the real highlight was unexpected. When looping back through Cleland Blight, there was a beach full of swans and you could see the penguins. However, this part of the walk is inaccessible depending on the tide, so we ended up having to double back on ourselves halfway down. But we got to see a bunch of wallabies, so we weren't mad about it. This was such a fun day. The boyfriend did good.
And of course, there is also the social element. If you have friends that are down to go on hikes with you or a partner, it's a great way to spend quality time together, to experience new things together. Plus, you normally don't have phone coverage, so you can't check your phone, even if you want to. The throughline hobby, socializing. Socialization deserves its own category because you can do all the cool stuff all the time, but it is often better with other people there to enjoy it too. Also, and I know we touched on this briefly before, but it is worth emphasizing how isolated modern life can make us when we're discussing trying to essentially build a more fulfilling day-to-day. Humans are social creatures. Connection is important for us, mentally and physically. To quote the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, social isolation has been linked to mental illness, emotional distress, suicide, the development of dementia, premature death, and poor health behaviors, as well as biological effects, including high blood pressure and impaired immune function. Now look, I don't want to demonize technology here. As somebody who has lived overseas from my entire family for almost a decade, WhatsApp is so useful. It allows us to have regular phone calls and I still get to feel really connected to them. In that article I referenced a second ago, there's actually an entire section explaining how the link between social media and loneliness and/or social isolation is not straightforward. In some uses, researchers have found it can benefit people, and in others, it can be harmful. However, social media does give us easy ways to almost imitate real connection without allowing us to actually feel its benefits, and I think we need to be mindful of that. So you might have a technical friend where you just like each other's Instagram stories, you technically feel caught up with their life, and vice versa, they know everything about you because you've put it onto the internet. Babes, don't do that. But does that mean that you would feel comfortable calling them in crisis? Or even because you're bored and you want to hang out? Let's say one of the hobbies on this list has caught your attention and you're like, yes, let me bring a social element to that. That friend who you technically call a friend, who you technically engage with, send all the likes and whatnot, do you actually feel comfortable sending them a DM or picking up the phone being like, hey, let's do this? And not to mention the actual, foundations of modern life. I love work from home. This is not me engaging in back to office propaganda, but I can also acknowledge the new lack of social space that creates. When I first started working, for example, I was always surrounded by people. Most of the friend groups I've made in Australia were made through work because I came here at 19, I didn't know anyone. So where else was I going to meet people? Bills needed to be paid. But not only giving me the opportunity to meet new people, being in the office also meant that outside of my co-workers, friends I already had were also up, ready, and at least loosely in the same area at the same time. A lot of my friends worked in the city, albeit spread across different places. So let's say we all knock off loosely around 5:30. Again, we're already up, dressed, in the city, so it makes it easy for us to grab dinner or check out a movie or something. Nowadays, a lot of us live outside of the city because money. and in completely different directions, of course. And all of this just combines to create a perfect situation where spontaneous and easy socialization, it just doesn't get the same opportunities that it used to. And I say all this to say, socialization is something that can fall to the wayside quite easily in our modern lifestyles. And if we're talking about intentionally building hobbies to develop a well-rounded present, I think I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't also tack on intentionally creating space to connect with other people. The thing is though, I don't really know what to put specifically for this section because you can turn pretty much any hobby into an opportunity for socialization. If you have an existing friend group, you could just take on the role of organizer, host a monthly book club, or create a hiking group chat where you can decide on places to visit across the month. Maybe carpooling arrangements because fuel is expensive. You could ask your friends what their hobbies are and see if you can tag along. Beware though, if you have any friends in their 30s, they might say golf, and that is information that you cannot unknown. On the other hand, your friends might be in the same boat as you, not having necessarily enough hobbies and wanting to try new things. And so maybe you could try exploring new things together. Of course, all of that is assuming that you already have friends. Maybe you've moved to a new city or something like that. So if you're looking for new friends, honestly, you could just find a club that likes something you already like. Run clubs, for example, are massive here in Australia. Now, don't get me wrong, you could not catch me dead at one, but still, the point remains that things like that do exist. But what do you guys enjoy? Naturally, all these suggestions are just that, suggestions based off my personal interests. I've also tried to keep them semi-cost friendly and generic in the sense of hopefully being practical for the masses, i.e. I think gardening is a rewarding and practical hobby that for enjoyment, I 100% would have put on this list, but gardening requires space that not everyone has. Again, the idea of this video is not to give you some kind of strict, you must do this list, but to open the conversation around hobbies and screen time up a little bit. So I open the floor to you guys. What are your favorite hobbies that make you feel like your life is worth being present for? Tell me in the comments. I would love to know. I am very nosy. And while you're down there, like, hype, subscribe, all the engagement things, please and thank you. It really helps out my channel and I do appreciate it. So we've covered long-term rewards. What about short-term ones? Now, nothing exists in a vacuum. And you may have periodically screamed at the screen about attention span and dopamine, etc. And to that I will say, you're not wrong. I do have a video that talks about how our phones, and especially algorithmic content like TikTok, effectively hijacks the brain's short-term reward circuit by becoming the artificially purest reward in the room, and in every room, because it's always with you, constantly reinforcing that loop. I will link that video in the description box if you want to explore that side of things a little bit more. It also covers some free ways that you can try to reduce that reward queue. So if you feel like you need that kind of two-prong approach, the link is there, my friends. But yeah, that is everything for today. As always, thank you to my channel members and thank you to you for hanging out with me. Okay, bye.